I mean, I really want to know of the people who have 5% or less, churn and we're in the spreadsheet bucket. Like, what are they doing? Like, would love to double click on that bar.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got like the desired results and they're in a spreadsheet.
There's a lot of assumptions around customer success health scores, okay? Some of you might already think that they know the answers. So we did the survey. I'm really glad we did it because even I learned something. So we had a lot of outcomes and statistical analysis, but I'm just going to highlight the most interesting ones in my opinion. So we had three main themes that came out of that research. One is who is using health scores? And then what is the true impact of customer health scores? I think there's a lot of assumptions of what health score is going to benefit the business. And then there's the reality. And then what are the current trends? What are people using? What metrics? How they're using it or how they are, updating it, how often? Before we start, I'd like to remind everyone, subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the great videos that we produce on customer success. Who is using customer health scores? Some of it is not surprising, okay? But it is more prevalent, sounds like, in larger customer success teams, not surprising. When there's a larger customer base, over 100 customers, obviously. But then we found that when the CSM to customer ratio is below 1 to 60, so when it's 1 to 20, 1 to 10, 1 to 30, there's more aptitude for customer health score. You would think the other way around is like, oh, the more customers each CSM manages, the more it makes sense to have a customer health score, the more it is maintained. It's actually the other way around. So the lower the customer ratio, the higher touch model, the more prevalent customer health score seems to be. So this is the ones that said yes had like predominantly a lot lower customer engagement. So 60 and below 60 is like the prevalent when we had health scores. And then it's also more prevalent when the touch point is more frequent. Some of the organization had all engagement models implemented, so it was hard to see the high touch models had customer health scores. And then the true impact of customer health scores, teams maintaining customer health score are more mature and scalable. So here's what we asked them. What are your strengths as a team? And we were expecting that customer success teams that had a health score have better attributes, like they're more proactive, they're better at prioritizing tasks, so they have better visibility to the customer adoption on overall health. But we had the exact same strengths from those who did not have a health score. The only thing that we found as a differentiator is that these two popped up as major strengths, which is clarity of roles and the ability to scale the team. And I think that this has to do with a lot of the times, like the majority of the teams that had a health score actually had a CS technology. And clarity of role, if I have a health score, I know what my metrics are. And so I'm more clear around what it is that success means. If you think that you're going to do a health score and be more proactive and have the team better prioritize they're both very strong at that. So that's really interesting. So we asked about why do you maintain the customer health score? 46% of them did that to forecast churn and or renewals. 23% to foster proactivity. Now we already know that that's a moot point. Identify upsell opportunity, only 16%. Increased solution adoption, 14%, and 1% to classify client versus best in class. The sad news is that we can find a clear connection between the ability to upsell or do add-ons to the use of a health score. No connection. So if you have a health score, doesn't mean that you're going to have better upsell and cross-sell opportunities.
I think health scores are just not as scientific as we think. There's just so much art to it. I use it only as a barometer just to kind of see where the portfolio is based on, a few key things. But let's be real. We've all had customers who are very healthy churn or who have the health score model that we spent so much time building out renew, and they were at the other end of that spectrum. So I just find this so fascinating.
Totally. I agree with you. I'll tell you, we recently kind of started to deprecate it because 50% of our accounts were red, but north of 95% of our accounts were renewing. And so you just couldn't correlate. And so we started to switch over to some other metrics to kind of correlate particular risk factors or upsell. And so I was wondering if there was that data on correlation between a renewal rate at a company and a health score.
What we found is churn rate was lower when a customer health score was developed and maintained. And not only that, so this is the group you can see with the yeses, they had overall, but everybody sort of like had, so it wasn't very consistent, but we did find that if they were impacted, whether they had a churn issue or not, if you did have a customer health score, you would have a lower increase in churn rate in 2020, because we knew that churn rate went up for a number of reasons, regardless of health score or not. But were you able to have better control over it if you had a health score? If you decreased it more. If it increased, it increased less. So I thought that was really interesting to see.
I mean, I really want to know, of the people who have 5% or less, churn, and we're in the spreadsheet bucket, like, what are they doing? Like, I would love to double click on that bar. Yeah. I mean, they've got like the desired results and they're in a spreadsheet. It's like, who is that? And like, what I want to know, like, are they doing something even better? What are they up to?
There are some still $1 million product and the company's stuck with it.
Yeah.
So,
they're lying.
How much commonality do you think there is across this about what a health score is?
So we did ask what did they include in the customer health score, which is the best we could do in a survey, obviously. But my guess is that a lot of the times the health scores are not optimized or not done in an optimized manner, which is one of the conclusions I think that I have from this survey.
So it'd be interesting to look at too, like sentiment. So the health score by sentiment versus the actual calculated health score, and to see, the correlation between renewal and expansion of how well the CSM, because in a portfolio less than 60, let's just say 10, ideally they're close enough to their customer that their health sentiment should align to those other key metrics. Whereas when you do have a portfolio of 100 or more, the CSM sentiment probably doesn't mean a whole lot in comparison to adoption and some of the other calculated pieces.
Health scores are valuable because I see them as an instrument to drive conversation inside a company. So customer success should lead the way and say, we've arrived at this measure of assessing our customers. Do you agree? And most of the time people don't agree with that. So you have a conversation, and I think you can help transform the way people think and look at customers through data that's presented through the health score. And so that's kind of the way I'm thinking about it, and when I'm helping to influence a little bit, that Oracle's developing a little more sophisticated one now. We're encountering that right now. So sales doesn't agree, support more or less agrees, marketing is kind of out of the picture. So you know what I mean? Like there's a conversation that can be had using the health score, I think, as a device to transform.
The objective of why we're doing customer health scores. And I think the main issue right now that we have, and this is why there's no correlation, there's poor correlation. Yep. It's because, this question, why are you creating it in the first place? I think it's all the wrong reasons. If we could build a customer health score to develop these internal conversations or even external conversations with clients, then the health score looks different. And it's not to say, are they going to churn or not? It's really about, are they becoming best in class? Or what else should we be doing strategically to help our customer base become successful? But you can see how many of them are using that for that.
It shows you.
So I think that's really what the aha moment for me is like, okay, they're trying to forecast better, but you can't do that. There's just so many things that influence a renewal decision. Let me show you a few more things. The lowest churn rate, because we asked what's your churn rate? And so we wanted to see if there's a correlation. If you had a low churn rate because you had a health score or not so much. We couldn't find correlation there. So then we said, well, what if, for those who did have a churn rate, which ones had the lowest one? And the only correlation we found is that if they were using a CRM system or a customer success software, they received a lower churn rate regardless of whether or not they had a health score. Can you just imagine?
And again, I want to make sure that I got that. It's like you're saying they had either a CRM or customer success as opposed to a spreadsheet. Is that what?
Yeah. Some teams don't use the CRM application. They don't use a customer success software, and they have everything in spreadsheets.
If they're using a customer success solution or even a CRM solution, they're just going to be more apt to good, healthy processes doing this kind of stuff versus just doing it on.
Yeah. So if you look at the lowest bracket, 0 to 5% churn rate, the dominant ones are the ones that have a customer success software.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, I think it's all about visibility across the organization. So product knows where to go to get information, and sales and CS, and it's just making sure everybody's talking the same language and doing the right things.
But isn't it surprising? Like a little bit, like.
Yeah, it is.
Like,
it's
right?
kind of reassuring to see, though.
Yeah. The reason we did that is that we want to have executives make decisions better. And if you could see across 200 companies what is predominantly recurring themes, then you can come up with some conclusions and avoid some mistakes. All right, so current trends, how do people use customer success health scores if they have it? So we asked them, what do you include? What metrics, what components do you include in a customer health score? And we found that usage and engagement are twice more likely to be used versus anything else to assess customer health score. And then you could see like it's twice as much as ROI, which is interesting. I thought that business impact would be one of the first things, how much value they're getting. No, it's like usage twice as much.
Well, here's the thing. I think that most of the customer health score tools aren't set up to track ROI. I think that's part of the problem. A lot of the tools are really heavily focused and make it easy to use certain formulas, which are heavily focused around usage, engagement, your manual relationship setting, NPS scores, all of that. That makes sense to me based on what I know about the tools in the market.
A lot of times I feel like we aggregate something or come up with something in order to educate the rest of the company too. Like NPS, the health score, like they're just kind of glommed onto by other leaders, right? And they can understand health is whether the customer is red, yellow, green, right? But all the stuff underneath it is really the most important. And so it just makes me think, like, are we doing a bit of a disservice to report on just a couple of key factors, or would we be better off, sort of sharing a scorecard maybe in a way that others can understand, but it's not pinning it to maybe just like a score.
All right. So let me ask companies, your team, how often do you update the customer score? Like how often do you update it? And so that was kind of interesting. 2% actually do it annually. And then, but most are either doing it quarterly or monthly. Now remember that most of the people or most of the companies with health scores have a high touch model. And then we asked them about the algorithm. 48% update their algorithm once a year. 26% never. Set it and forget it. And then 26% quarterly. So I think that was really brilliant that people actually think about the health score in a way that, okay, this is an evolving thing that we need to revisit every quarter because it does dictate what my CSMs are going to focus on.
It's interesting because I would imagine there's like this line between you want to be able to baseline and show your trend. And so if you're updating it quarterly, can you ever really set that baseline like you can annually? And am I in a business that's evolving so quickly that you want to stay real time? So, I can see that line being on either one.
And then we asked how many of them actually updated in a spreadsheet versus a CRM application versus a customer success software. And you can see that 79% is done in a technology. Very few updated in a spreadsheet. 33% score the health scores in a manual manner. So that means the CSM goes and they have qualitative judgment around what the score should be. And only 29% do it automatically, but a large percent does like an integration of both. Some scores are manual, some scores are automated.